The Renin-Angiotensin-Aldosterone System is a system which integrates the physiology of renal, cardiovascular, endocrine, and the autonomic nervous system into a coordinated response. This system answers the question, how does the body maintain perfusion when pressure or volume begin to fall? Let's start with the components that play a role in the Renin-Angiotensin-Aldosterone system. And first we look at the juxtaglomerular cells, which are modified smooth muscle cells that surround the afferent arterial. We have a substance called angiotensinogen, which is a peptide which is created by the liver and circulates throughout our plasma. The juxtaglomerular cells secrete renin, and renin is an enzyme which acts on angiotensinogen to create angiotensin I. Angiotensin I subsequently is acted upon by angiotensin converting enzyme, abbreviated ACE, which is located in endothelial cells and seems to be abundant in the endothelial cells of our pulmonary system. ACE converts angiotensin I to angiotensin II. Angiotensin II has a number of actions, but for now we'll focus on its effects on going to the adrenal cortex and causing the release of aldosterone. So once aldosterone is secreted from the adrenal cortex, it's going to have its actions on the distal portion of the nephron. Aldosterone is going to regulate the amount of sodium that's reabsorbed, as well as the amount of potassium that's secreted in this portion of the nephron. Aldosterone is a steroid hormone, so when it's released, it's going to bind to intracellular receptors within the distal portion of the nephron. These receptors are called mineralocorticoid receptors. As a result of binding to this receptor, aldosterone is going to have several effects that occur simultaneously. It results in the increased activity of sodium and potassium channels on the apical membrane in this area. It also results in the insertion of additional channels, both for sodium and potassium on the apical membrane, as well as increases the number of sodium-potassium pumps on the basolateral membrane. The net effect of this is to increase sodium reabsorption and increase potassium secretion. When we take a look at the effects of aldosterone, and particularly at this point focusing on its effects on sodium, we've seen in other places, particularly the proximal tubule, where as we reabsorb sodium, water would tend to follow. But in the distal portion of the nephron, we have tight junctions, and water is not able to follow the sodium. So that's an issue we'll have to look into further as far as how can both of these occur simultaneously. To help us understand that, we need to look more in detail about some of the components of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, specifically focusing on the actions of angiotensin II. Angiotensin II is a very important pressure and volume defending hormone. It has a plethora of effects, and we're going to highlight several of those here. Keep in mind that angiotensin II's actions are going to try and defend against a drop in blood pressure or a drop in blood volume. So see if you can identify how each of these actions help contribute to that. First, as we mentioned earlier, angiotensin II causes the renal cortex to release aldosterone. That results in retaining sodium, which then has the potential to help us hold on to water as well, increasing plasma volume. Angiotensin II is a potent vasoconstrictor, so it acts on angiotensin receptors on smooth muscle, causing vasoconstriction. As a result of vasoconstricting arterioles, this is a way of increasing systemic vascular resistance, which will help us defend against drops in blood pressure. Angiotensin II has effects on the afferent and efferent arteriole, causing vasoconstriction, but its effects are preferential in that it causes greater constriction of the efferent arteriole. As a result, this helps us maintain our perfusion pressures even in the face of decreased plasma volume. Angiotensin II acts directly on the sodium-hydrogen exchange in the proximal tubule. This helps us increase the reabsorption of sodium, and in the proximal tubule, that will result in water following. Angiotensin II works directly on the posterior pituitary, stimulating the release of antidiuretic hormone. It also works in the hypothalamus to increase thirst, And finally, what we'll highlight is angiotensin II works on the central nervous system to increase sympathetic outflow. So the Renin-Angiotensin-Aldosterone system, and particularly the actions of angiotensin II, is a powerful system that helps protect against decreases in plasma volume as well as decreases in blood pressure. Looking at the effects of aldosterone in the distal portion of the nephron, we again emphasize here the import of causing a retention of sodium. But as we mentioned previously, although aldosterone causes us to hold on to sodium, the distal portion of the nephron is not permeable to water on its own. This is where the actions of ADH become important. ADH determines how much water can be retained along with the sodium. The way that ADH works is it's going to cause the insertion of aquaporins on both the apical and basolateral membranes within this distal portion of the nephron. Recall that ADH is stimulated by angiotensin II, which is part of that Renin-Angiotensin-Aldosterone system. So when ADH is present, the increased sodium that's reabsorbed as a result of the effects of aldosterone may cause water to follow depending on the amount of ADH is present. So what are the stimuli for renin release? There are three different things which I want to highlight: reduced plasma volume, reduced mean arterial pressure, and reduced renal perfusion. These three different stimuli primarily use two mechanisms that account for the renin release in these settings. First, we have the juxtaglomerular cells. These are those modified smooth muscle cells around the afferent arteriole. These function not only to secrete the renin, but also as intrarenal baroreceptors. So reduced pressure and stretch in the afferent arteriole directly stimulate these juxtaglomerular cells to stimulate renin release. The other mechanism is that reduced mean arterial pressure unloads the arterial baroreceptors that we talked about in the cardiovascular system. When these baroreceptors are unloaded, they increase sympathetic outflow. Some of these sympathetic nerves, which go to the kidney, stimulate beta-1 receptors on the JG cells, causing them to increase renin release. So our three stimuli, reduced plasma volume, decreased mean arterial pressure, and reduced renal perfusion, all will cause an increase in the release of renin, setting off this renin-angiotensin pathway, and as a result, all of these different effects will occur to help us defend against drops in plasma volume or drops in blood pressure. When we think of the Renin-Angiotensin-Aldosterone system, we typically think of it as defending against drops in blood pressure, decreases in plasma volume, or decreased renal perfusion. Unrelated to these, aldosterone also has a major function of specifically defending against hyperkalemia. Recall from our discussions on membrane potential the important role that potassium plays in establishing our resting membrane potential. Hyperkalemia can dramatically alter the resting membrane potential, making us much more susceptible to depolarization of cells, and this is particularly significant in that it can cause cardiac arrhythmias or abnormal heartbeats that can lead to death. So in the face of hyperkalemia, this increased potassium causes an increased release of aldosterone. So although in this setting we really do not have any need to increase sodium reabsorption, aldosterone causes actions on both sodium and potassium handling, so we will see an increase in sodium reabsorption. The important step here, though, is that aldosterone in this setting is going to increase the secretion of potassium to try and bring those levels back closer to normal. The aldosterone release is triggered directly by the increased potassium acting on the adrenal cortex. So in this setting, the elevated potassium causing aldosterone release is completely unrelated to the renin-angiotensin system. Another condition our body has to be prepared to deal with is when we have an excess of volume, or what we refer to as volume overload. The hormone that's going to be helpful in this is called atrial natriuretic peptide, or ANP. There are other natriuretic peptides. One that's used clinically is called BNP, but we will be using ANP as our prototype to describe its actions. Atrial natriuretic peptide is released in response to volume overload, hypervolemia. This volume overload causes stretching of the atria, which in turn causes release of ANP. ANP has several actions which will help to defend against the volume overload. First, it causes vasodilation of the afferent arteriole and constriction of the efferent arteriole. The combined effects result in a significant increase in glomerular filtration rate. This increases the filtered load of sodium, as well as increasing the volume of filtrate present. ANP directly inhibits sodium reabsorption. So we have an increased load of sodium. So along with the increased sodium load that ANP causes, we also have mechanisms where ANP directly inhibits reabsorption of that sodium. ANP inhibits renin and aldosterone. So by reducing renin and aldosterone, we're suppressing the Renin-Angiotensin-Aldosterone System mediated sodium retention. So ANP promotes natriuresis, which is sodium excretion. Water accompanies that excreted sodium, contributing to diuresis, which is water excretion. The combined effects helps us reduce extracellular plasma volume.